Welcome. So this is going to be a very short overview of the personal life section of the families and households pack. So I just want to really just use this time just to explain what personal life is as an approach to understanding family life, where it fits in relation to some of the other approaches we've looked at, and generally what is unique about personal life. So that's what we're going to explore in this session. So let's get started. Okay, so what is personal life? What does it mean as a theory or as an approach to understanding the family? So first thing we do, let's put it in the context of where it fits between modern and postmodern. Now, the modern family was taking place between 1750 to the 1980s. It was a very stable family. It was fixed. It was generally nuclear or traditionally nuclear. There were segregated divisions of labour. And there was a movement, starting to move towards becoming symmetrical or being symmetrical in the later period of that modern era. Postmodern family, on the other hand, was obviously from the 1980s onwards. It was unstable. It was defined or sort of seen as a risk family. It was full of choice, diversity, fluidity. There was a range of family types that you could have, and these were not fixed. So you could start in one family type and change as life progressed, unlike the modern, which was fixed. There was a lot of negotiation. There were flexible roles, and obviously this is the family type that we were seeing. Now, personal life is a bit somewhere in between these two approaches. So it's kind of working out where does it go. Now, personal life is a late modern theory. So it was coming at the end of the modern era, so sort of those 70s and 80s period of time. It still sees class, gender, and ethnicity as important in shaping family life. So whereas postmodern theories tend to say that class, gender, ethnicity don't matter, those are kind of old ways of defining our family and they're no longer relevant. Personal life does say that's still important, but personal life, unlike the modern view of the family, recognises that we have some choice, not as much as postmodernism, but we do have choice. And they also recognise that the family life is changing, like postmodernism is not fixed. So as a theory, it fits somewhere between modern and postmodern definitions of family life. And that's why we put it in this late modern kind of bracket. So that's kind of roughly where it fits. It doesn't fit neatly into any area, and that's why we're sort of touching on it in this area. So what is the view of the family? How does personal life view family and the role of the family? Now, personal life is different as a perspective. So it's not focusing on the individual, it's not focusing on the role of individuals, it's focusing on the family as a whole. And it's looking at the relationship, the experience, the meanings, the value of family life, rather than a role or a purpose or a function in a wider context. And to help us understand those experiences, the meanings, the values, the beliefs, the connections, they look at lots of different ways in which we are connected and tied together, and obviously experiences of family life. So they will look at things beyond the traditional family. They will look at friendships, which this first image is meant to suggest. They'll look at the idea of chosen families, so the growth of same-sex couples and relationships and families, and the notion of chosen families where blood, birth, marriage doesn't have a significant role in family structures and definitions of the family, but there's a greater choice of who we want to include and involve in family life. We'll look at the idea of fictive relatives, dead relatives. So although a relative passes away and dies, they are still significant in the narrative of the family life. They're still involved and important in the family life. I think the best example of this is the Day of the Dead celebrations. In Mexico and sort of those cultures, which celebrates and recognises family members who have passed away, but they are still seen as important and relevant and considered still part of the family as a whole, and it's a good reflection of the family. So I think dead relatives is a key one to consider. We also have acquaintanceships, the idea of people who we know, we are acquainted or have connections with. We might have a conversation with them, but we wouldn't consider them to be friends. So acquaintanceships are key. Relationships across households also is one thing that is explored in personal life. So you might have a very, very good relationship with one sibling, but not with another. You may have a really strong relationship with one parent, but not another. So that's one of the things, again, is explored here, is the relationship within a household. We're bringing fictive relatives. So fictive relatives are people who are not officially a relative, but are involved in the family, maybe even referred to as a family member. So, for example, I have an Aunt Sue, who is not technically my aunt, it's my mum's friend, but the whole time I was growing up, she was always Aunt Sue, and as far as I was aware, she was my aunt and part of the family. And again, I didn't realise that until recently that she wasn't actually related to our family. So this would be in that idea of a fictive relative, someone we associate or consider to be a family member, but has no real blood, birth, marriage kind of tie to the family itself, and it comes back to those families of choice. We have dual heritage or cross-cultural relationships. So again, if you are someone who has two different cultural backgrounds, or you're having relationships, with someone with a different cultural background, that can cause, again, different experiences of family and views of the family because of these differing cultural ideals. Pets are always a key part. Our fur babies, part of the family, and again, this is one unique thing about personal life, not the only unique thing about it, but again, they consider the role of pets as part of the family, as family members. And last but not least, they sort of look at changes in gender. So the idea of gender identification and how this can change over time, and how family members can change their gender identification over time. And again, how that has a role within the family. So it's a very different perspective on family life. Now, the first thing I also wanted to touch on was this idea of individualization versus the connectedness thesis. Now, individualization is linked to postmodernism. So we act individually, we have pure relationships where we're in a relationship as long as it benefits us. We have this idea of confluent love, so we know that it's not going to be romantic, happily ever after love, but we're happy and in love and in a relationship, but it may not be forever. There's more choice, there's more diversity, there's risk and instability, and that's what the individualization thesis is about. The connectedness thesis, though, that's where personal life fits in a bit more, and social action theory fits in, is that we have choice, but we are connected to other people. So we are linked to other people, our family members, our friends, our relatives, our employers, boyfriends, girlfriends. We are all connected, we are tied together. And again, we have freedom, we can make choices, we can do what we want within the bounds and within the framework of that connectedness thesis and those connections. So for example, you could not just suddenly decide to go to Thailand for 6 months. You would have to, you'd speak to your parents, you'd have to talk to friends, you might tell your boss, you'd have to do lots of different things in order to do that. Also, you can't just go traveling at the moment anyway because of Corona, but the idea being that you couldn't just do these decisions without consulting other people. And that's the idea about this connected. We are tied and connected to lots of people. That means we do not have that complete freedom that postmodernism suggests. Okay, and last but not least, we'll kind of just look at a couple of the thinkers. I just don't want to drag this video out. So first we have Smart. Now, Carol Smart became quite frustrated with sociology, and sociologists arguing that family members are they're not committed to the family anymore, that we have individualism, we can choice, diverse, we can do what we want. And actually what Smart wanted to highlight was that we do have a little bit more choice, but in the notion of that connectedness thesis, we are tied together, we're bound together, and actually we need to focus on the bonds and the relationships and experience of the family. And what Smart does is she identifies 5 ways in which we can be part of a family, how we are connected to the family. So let's focus on the individual, how we are connected to that family. So first of all, she highlights memory. And again, the memories we have of the family can tell a lot about what is significant to us or significant to people in terms of their relationships. So sometimes some memories are more revealing than others. But ultimately, I sort of think about it in the sense of, generally when you think of your family life, your upbringing, have you got generally more positive or more negative memories and experiences? And again, that would shape your view of family life as whether it's more negative or more positive. We also have biography. Now, like autobiographies or biographies, which is a book of someone's life, you will have a record of your life. And again, this is a good way of getting a sense of how involved you are and how committed and how included you were in family life, particularly because it's a record of what you've done. So it might be things like photos of you at your nan's Christmas party, as is my picture here. It could be memories of your first day of school, just me there second in from the right. It could be memories of activities you do, like playing in the band. So there's a biography, it's this record of what you have done, and it doesn't just have to be pictures. It could be home videos, it could be the pictures that your parents still keep on the fridge from when you were 2. It's those kind of records and those documents and that story of you and your role within the family. And again, parents always have those embarrassing stories of when you're 3 and you pooed on the beach in front of half a dozen people. It's that idea that those stories and those narratives is the biography that connects you to the family. We also look at embeddedness, how embedded you are in the family life, and this is the web of relationships. And also the idea elements of past are carried forward. So I've sort of thought about this in terms of like the family heirlooms, the family records, the stories, and again how you relate to those items. So it could be stuff like family heirlooms being passed down, and the kind of the traditions or the heritage of your granddad's cufflinks being passed down and worn by every man at a wedding. It's those kind of that stuff would make you embedded in family life, and it's the relationships with the past, sort of coming back to the idea of dead relatives. Now, relationality again is important, and it's the idea that we are not individuals, but our relationships are important. So whether you're a sister, a brother, a cousin, a niece, a nephew, a granddaughter, grandson, friend, it's the relationships you have with other people which help define you and help define your position in the family and provide you with your sense of who you are. And last but not least, Smart talks about imaginary. Now, imaginary is this idea of the types of family. We have the families we live with and the families we live by, in her definition. Now, the families we live with are the imaginary, almost the imaginary, the fictive family. I always think about this, it's the idea of the Instagram or the Facebook family pictures. So those perfect moments of harmony and peace and love and integration that get captured and you put on Facebook or Instagram, and you throw on the hashtag of perfect family, or I love my family, or typical family life. That would be the imaginary family. The family we live with is the real family, the non-social media, Facebook, Instagram family, where it's not all smiles and happy and there's giggling, there's arguments, and they don't show, they've got like the image on the screen for imaginary, you've got the family sitting there all nice. They don't show you the 40,000 previous photos attempting to capture that image with one of the kids running off or someone having a fight. So again, that's what Smart highlights, is that these different notions and understandings of ways we are connected to the family are also equally important for highlighting our role. And if you think back to research methods, this is very qualitative, it's very it's full of Verstehen, it's very valid, it's very subjective, it's personal, it's these are things that you can't generalize. So coming back to biography, my family Christmas parties and my first day of school and my relationships in the family, they will not be the same as yours, and we all have a very unique and different experience of family life. And that's what kind of Smart is highlighting, is that we don't just need to look at the role and the purpose and the function of a family, but we also need to look at how people experience it, relate to it, and feel about it. But just finally, before we wrap up, is the evaluations. So for personal life, it is very good because it avoids the assumption about family life that family life is good or bad, or the role is positive and negative. It just looks at what is going on in the family, what are the meanings, the feelings, and the relationships. It looks at the family, and it sort of is more relevant. It is one of those theories which, compared to functionalism or Marxism, their views of the family very outdated. It is a little bit more contemporary, and I think those on the basis that it is about self-reflection and individual experience, that it does make it more relevant today. And it does avoid looking at relationships as fixed. It does recognise that they are changing. It does recognise and consider the past, the present, the future as part of our relationships. But the downside is that this is interactionism, or kind of close to interactionism. It focuses on the meanings, so it can be criticised for being overly subjective. It's difficult to establish any patterns, any trends, any generalisable ideas, because every individual have different memories and embeddedness and imaginary notions of family life. And lastly, Marxism, critical thinkers would argue that it ignores the structural inequalities. And so feminism, Marxism would say it ignores the influence of capitalism, the influence of patriarchy, which shape relationships and experiences. So these would be some of those final criticisms. Okay, hopefully you found this helpful. Again, whack a like, or on the bottom if this is helpful. I know that sounds cringy saying it the second I come out of my mouth, but remember, like and subscribe, and take care, and hopefully speak to you all soon. Take care, bye.